Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
I named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my man who loves not one, not two, but three, but 4 hours of Justice League content. It's Frank. How are you today?
Pew, pew, pew. Hello, we are here for hour 1 of 4 of our discussion of Justice League. This podcast is coming to you in 4:3 aspect ratio, so I hope that your ears are hearing it all in the center. But this
podcast was filmed in 1953.
This podcast is gray.
Yeah,
soon.
It will be soon.
It will be
indeed.
soon. Yeah.
Frank, tell me what beer you are drinking before we dive into Zack Snyder's Justice League.
I am drinking an unfiltered Pils from Oxbow Brewing Company of Portland, Maine.
Oh yeah, Oxbow's good.
Actually, of Newcastle, Maine, technically, but their tap room is in Portland, Maine. It is a Luppolo. I think Luppolo dry hopped Pils, and it is. Oh, it's Italian. It's an Italian style Pils. So it's got sort of that that Peroni sort of.
Of course, the one episode in months that I'm not drinking Peroni.
Yep.
Of course, somebody's got to represent here, though. Good for you.
Well, I mean, if you weren't going to do it, I had to. So yes, it's an Oxbow. I guess in Italian it'd be Luppolo, or Luppolo. Yeah, probably Luppolo.
I love it when you speak Portuguese to me.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah. Uncle
Frank,
Jamie.
Hey, Uncle Jamie. Serious question, Frank. Your beer is unfiltered. Does that mean that you'll be unfiltered this evening?
Ooh, no, never.
This morning, this afternoon.
We cannot.
Whatever.
We don't have an explicit tag on this podcast, so no.
Okay, well that makes sense then.
It means I can't be as vulgar as Batman in this movie.
You sure can't. We'll talk about that. All right, Frank. I'm drinking a Leffe, which is a Belgian ale.
Yes.
Leffe is excellent. Leffe. Mm-hmm. Anno 1240. This beer's been around for a long time. Not this particular one that I'm drinking, but the recipe at least.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm glad, because otherwise you might get sick. But
probably.
Yeah.
But it's got some nice vanilla and cloves in here. It's all good. Love a good blonde Leffe.
Love it. Yeah. No, that's one of the easy. I feel like that's one of the easier to come by Belgians. You can get it at like the supermarket, or at least where we're in our area. I feel like you can get it at a lot of supermarkets.
It depends if your supermarket is allowed to sell alcohol. Depends on
your
state.
Depends on your state. But I feel like it's pretty easy to come by in terms of you don't have to go to a specialty store to get this one. Where other Belgians you might only get at specialty stores.
Though according to the back of the bottle, it's not really available everywhere.
Yeah.
So check your local listings. Please recycle. Oh, was I supposed to drink this already? Oh, no, wait, no, December. Okay, great.
Next December, I assume, not last December.
Yeah, 21. Yeah, cool. I got nervous.
Cool.
All right. Okay, I bought it in the new year. I shouldn't have to worry.
Okay, there you go. All right,
Frank.
We have a lot. We have a lot to cover.
We do. Minute 1. I think that the opening credits. No, but for real. Let's.
I'm like, what if we did a minute by minute podcast of this movie? One of those movies.
Oh my God!
How many minutes is that?
I don't. Too many. Well, 102. 4 hours.
It's like 240 episodes.
240 episodes.
Can you imagine doing 240 episodes about one movie? Anyway, please, the floor is yours.
We would spend minutes just on the opening credits alone.
Yeah.
All right, so Frank, it's almost unavoidable that we're going to do at least some comparisons between the cut that was released in 2017 and versus the Zack Snyder Justice League that we saw via the HBO Max. But I would like to talk about the movie mostly on its own merits as opposed to like, just going back and forth like, oh, this is new. Oh, this was new. Oh, this was new. Oh, this was new. I don't want to do that. I'm going to sound like a broken, this is new record. So let's just kind of talk about the movie, and then when we dip into the 2017 version, we dip into it. But
yeah,
I think to start, what were your impressions of the 2017 film, or what are they now? And then we'll talk about ZSJL.
Yeah, that's a good way to start it. Yeah, I feel like at the time I gave the 2017 version more credit than it was being given at the time. With the passage of more time, I don't remember it as fondly as I did at first. I think I was just like I liked there were things about it. Let me put it this way. I don't think it was better overall, but there were things about it that I enjoyed more than I enjoyed in the previous two films in that trilogy. So I think at the time I had a more favorable thought about it. And we did an episode with you, me, and Palmer, I think, where we talked about it. I'll throw it in the show notes for folks who want to listen back. In retrospect, I would give that movie probably like a C or C minus.
Yeah, that's where I land on it as well. Yeah,
and
it's got some good bits in it.
It does. It does have some good bits in it. Many of which it turns out came from this version.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
But I would give this one a B, maybe even verging on a B plus.
That's good.
Not by comparison, on its own merits. I think that it's. Yeah. I think it's a better version of the story, and frankly, probably the one that we should have seen. To start, I just don't think it needed to be 4 hours long.
Here's my thing on that. So, yes, it is definitely better. It's definitely a better version. I finished the movie thinking, I don't know exactly what they felt needed to be changed. Like
same, there were things.
Like, what were you nervous? Like, what were you nervous about?
Right.
Like, there are some things that like maybe a more general audience might not like go in for that we can talk about, but like but mostly I walked away, I was like, is optimistic. The whole team got together and we're on the same page the whole time, which actually can't be said for the 2017 film.
That's right.
And character motivations made sense and blah blah blah, and I don't understand what needed shifting. And I think that's what most people ended up walking away with, even those that were not like, it's the best movie ever. Mostly everybody walked away went, yeah, that was better. I watched this with my wife, who saw the 2017 one with me because, she likes Wonder Woman, and that's pretty much where her interest ends. And so at the end, after 4 hours, she was still like, yeah, that was better. And I barely remember the last one, and I just know that was actually better. So props to them.
Yes.
So the 4 hour thing, technically it didn't need to be 4 hours, but if we saw this in 2017, it wouldn't have been 4 hours.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So I think like it's the director's cut, like it's his version. So throw it all in there. It's your whole vision. So, and so like, why not self-indulge from that way? And also the basis of which this thing was like came out in the first place was, we want to see Zack's movie. We want to see this version of the film. Give him the whole movie. Because if you cut this movie 3 hours and you say, oh, there's still an hour that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Then then like release the hour we haven't seen.
Right.
Right. Just
oh gosh. And to be fair, it was supposed to be a mini series when it came to HBO Max. The decision
correct.
To make it back into a movie was a relatively last minute decision. So
that's correct. Yeah. And that it just really had to do with you would have had to pay the actors differently, and it would have cost more money and blah blah blah. So that's why you get chapter breakdowns. So if you want to watch it in parts, you can. Boom. Great place to stop. End of that part.
And they were good. So, they were good stopping points too.
They were great stopping points. And so I didn't mind the length. I didn't feel it until the end, until the last nightmare sequence. Spoilers from here on out for Zack Snyder's Justice League, of course. But let's talk about the movie kind of as we go chronologically. It starts with Superman's, like, literally the bell has been rung, right? BVS, like he talks about, like, the bell has already been rung. And that bell, that gong, is actually, like, Superman's death cry that spreads across the multiverse. And that's what wakes the mother boxes up. They're, like, pinged to it and so on and so forth. What do you think about that?
I think that it's a very like coherent way to like start the like it picks up right where the last one left off, sort of, right, and it drives the last movie kicks off the action of this one. I like that a lot.
That's right.
There's a lot of moments like that where it's sort of like, oh, that just makes more sense. That just fits. The pieces fit together better.
That's right. Yeah. That happens to be why Steppenwolf comes to this Earth in the first place.
Yes.
Oh, they didn't know that it was the Earth that they lost at before because the mother boxes got left behind.
Right.
And they couldn't refine the planet out of thousands and thousands of planets. And so, yeah, it all just tracks. And I think every character has an arc that makes sense to that character as much as, each character is given one. So like, I would say Wonder Woman doesn't really have an arc in the film. She's pretty consistent from the beginning to the end. But Aquaman's got an arc, Batman's got an arc, Flash has got an arc. Even I would argue that Superman's arc goes back to Man of Steel.
Yeah,
it's a full trilogy.
That's right. It's a longer arc. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cyborg has a backstory in this version.
I mean, Cyborg is really the driving force of the movie, right? And which is he wasn't in 2017. It's
no,
like in Gilligan's Island where they were like, it's the Professor and Mary Ann.
Yeah.
Like in the new one, that's the Zack Snyder one. The Joss Whedon 2017 cut is when they went and the rest.
Yeah, and exactly the rest. Everybody else,
like what?
Yeah,
like,
and
what?
meanwhile he's like the driving force of this movie, and it's like triple the amount of Cyborg backstory. I mean, of Cyborg screen time even in this movie, and it's for good reason. Like it was kind of built around him, and it was. I just don't understand why they cut his. I can see why Ray Fisher is as upset as he was over the last couple of years. Because he really got the short end of the stick. He really, really did.
Absolutely. I mean, especially since this was like, he's new to film. This was his big thing, and and they basically took that, like they, pulled the rug right underneath him and said, well, no, you're not actually. And he has made comments that like there were meetings and blah blah blah, and people have said like, oh, like we can't have an angry black man as the front and center of this movie.
Like, can you?
And, like I know, tone deaf much, but but what was crazy to me is that watching this movie, I'm like, he's angry at his father. Like he's not like, like he's he basically sees himself as Frankenstein's monster, and it's him coming to terms with his new life and gifts versus curses and all that stuff. Like this is bigger than what like you're saying it is in meeting or whatever. And I just like that left a sour taste in my mouth after watching the movie and being like, wow, because he was great. Cyborg is not a character I ultimately like have an affinity towards. Like it's just like I could take him or leave him, and he made me care about the character I think as much as I'll ever care about the character.
Yeah, and I think if this. Honestly, this is one of the places where I'll be like, I think Zack Snyder did a great version with the character specifically, like a great version of the character, and like I would love to see the character have that much like heart and that much, just that much of a compelling story. And like I haven't read or seen other takes on the character that were as compelling as this one was to me.
I agree. I absolutely agree. As a Justice League movie as a whole, like you think like, oh, I'm going to see the Justice League finally together. Did this fulfill that need inside of you to go that said like, wow, the Justice League, they were all there. I watched them.
More than the 2017 version did, I think. Still left me a little wanting in the sense that out of a 4-hour movie, it's the second half and really only like the second half of the second half where you get all of them together. So I wish there was more, but it did a better job than the 2017 version did, and it's still not exactly. There's things that I won't nitpick, but like there are things that I would have done differently, and so from that standpoint. But in terms of like, did it sort of like check the box of like, yep, this is a Justice League movie? Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to tackle this, because it's such a behemoth of a film, is let's kind of go character by character, and let's break it down that way. We talked about Cyborg, and how that really worked. I think the Silas Stone stuff I thought was actually particularly effective.
Yeah.
and even him with Ryan Choi, who's like the second Adam.
Why would you cut Ryan Choi?
Right?
Why did he get cut?
He doesn't really have any bearing on the plot, right? So like when WB says, okay, this movie has to be 2 hours, you can see what gets cut, like fairly obviously. Like, okay, well, that doesn't advance the plot. That doesn't advance the plot. That doesn't advance the plot. Justice League is remarkably a strong character piece. Like it's really more, because it's more character driven, like with a MacGuffin as opposed to just plot driven. And which is the benefit of the 4 hour cut. But when WB says make it 2, it's the character stuff that inevitably gets cut, and that's across any studio mandates.
I think that's right.
2 hour movie.
I think that's right. And it was a fairly intricate story. So like you needed a lot. Like you had to cut those character moments for the plot to still make sense. And obviously they changed the plot in the 2017 version quite a bit, but for things to hold together, you had to remove character moments to keep in all the plot driven moments. And I think that's sort of where the 2017 version fell down, because it is so like sort of plot heavy for the sake of being plot heavy, and it lacks a lot of those character moments, a lot of that humanity. Where this has that in spades. Like this gives you, the Silas stuff is great. Is great. Backstory on. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I said Cyborg, I think, is as well treated here as I've ever seen him.
That's right. And even characters that like a bit about have stuff that's very driven. So like Batman's biggest drive is I made a promise to Superman that I like help protect the world but he says in this version particularly, like, I made a promise on his grave, and and that was like being like, well, Batman knows all about making promises on graves. Like that's his thing.
Yes.
That's the thing he does. He makes promises on graves. We even see that a bit in BVS. He goes back to his mom's, he keeps going back to his parents. The cemetery plot on Wayne Manor property. And so that thread continues here. That is so part of his character to be like, hey, I need to be okay, and I need to do this. And then like for him to go, like it's all logic, it's all this, and then he turns around to Alfred. He's like, faith, Alfred, faith. Like that's big. And then BVS, he's like, oh, alien in the sky, don't trust him, got to kill him, blah blah blah, all this stuff. The end of the movie, Martian Manhunter shows up and he's like, well, I'm happy to have you. Thanks for waking me up. I'll see you around.
But that's because he grew, right? That's
huge growth, right? Yeah, huge growth. And you don't get that in 2 hours. You don't get growth in 2 hours.
That's right. Not that kind of growth, yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. I feel like, the thing about the 4 hours is that I think that this could have been a 2 hour movie if you had 2 hours of, if Cyborg or Aquaman or Flash had their own film before this movie came out, then you could do that, because a lot of the backstory of those characters would be in their individual films. And maybe you could have even used, parts of those films to lead up to, like, maybe you have a little bit of Darkseid or a little bit of Mother Box's pinging or whatever at the end of one of the other films. Things like that. You could have done things like that would have shortened this movie, right? And you could have just done 2 hours and felt satisfied, felt edified. But because they didn't have that,
but that wasn't the plan. That wasn't
exactly.
That wasn't.
So that's what necessitates it. Nothing. Very little of the 4 hours is gratuitous. I think you could have maybe gotten it down to 3, and maybe that was his plan when he was.
I'm sure it was. Studio. I don't think no studio's going to release a 4. They haven't done that since like Ben-Hur.
Exactly. And even then, it was like that was like an exception and like an event.
Right. Exactly. So I just you just don't make money doing movies. Movies like that. People won't go. But when you can stop it in parts, it works out. It works out just fine.
Whole different thing. Honestly, the fact that we are in an era where streaming is even more prevalent this year than it has been 2 years ago. Makes it possible for this movie to exist as a 4 hour cut.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple things that really, really worked for me in this film. One, character growth from all these people and where they're coming from and what they're doing. One thing that really worked for me is it's gods trying to be people instead of people trying to be gods, right? Like that's the Marvel universe is like, we're regular people, but we're also superheroes. We eat shawarma. That's the Marvel here. That's always been the Marvel brand, right? That's that. But the DC brand is these are bigger than life characters. These are your Zeuses and your Ares and your Odins and your like your Artemises and all this stuff. And they're different now, but that's what they are. And this Zack Snyder's Justice League really leans into that, like so much so even in the way that like regular folk treat the characters. Like so when Bruce Wayne goes to see Arthur Curry and and then like Arthur's like, I'm just gonna walk into this water and take my sweater off and swim away and blah 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 because I just help these people like I'm Neptune or something.
Yes, yeah.
I just come and help the people. But then like the village sings a song that is like very Éowyn singing over the grave of her brother in Lord of the Rings. That means nothing to you, but
where my mind went was like all over the
but that's really what it is.
Yeah,
it's like old Nordic village song, and they're singing about being like being saved and love and what that means. You could actually, the song is real. You can look it up later. I'll put it in the show notes.
But can I sniff the sweater? That's what I really want to know.
See, but that's like, but when what they feel is a god or like some kind of being that is different than them in front of them.
Sure.
Like that's she loves him, but
sure.
I'm just
messing around.
I know, but I like
probably
the sweater
smelly.
sniff.
It was probably smelly at that
Yeah,
point.
well, that whole village is probably smelly, Frank.
Wow.
So it was low tide. But I like that because it's like a reverence kind of thing, and it's a cool concept because it's the new gods like the Fourth World, Darkseid, like Steppenwolf, all that stuff against like the mythological heroes of Earth. It's like it's just very large and sweeping in its context, and I like that the whole like it's the whole DC universe.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like, oh, it's the Justice League. This is like, you're basically just missing space, and even then they threw in Martian Manhunter at the end. So it's
they gave
Amazons.
us Green Lanterns in the flashback.
That's right, and Dead Kilowog in one of the nightmare sequences.
Yes, I noticed that. Yes,
yeah. So it just like it's the whole thing. It's not just these people coming together. They just represent the whole DC universe.
Right.
They come from all parts of it. They come from space. It's the tech side. It's the human side. It's the Amazons. It's the Atlantean side. Like it's all of it.
Yeah.
It's the metahuman. It's like all of the Justice League is all of the DC universe is represented in those heroes, and that was really well thought out, and I loved it. I loved that.
Totally agree. Yeah, I loved all of that. I did.
Yeah. I think the Amazons continue to be one of the strongest parts of the DC EU, though. Like
yes,
yes,
and they were well served in this film, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny because in the 2017 one, I remember I also saw it with my wife in that one, and she walked over, she's like, that was kind of gross the way that they were filmed, and like it just felt like they were sexualized and like all this stuff. You watch this one, slightly different angles, whatever else, and she's like, those people are awesome. Like look how strong, look at those arms, look how strong they are. And it's like it's amazing the difference in how characters are treated almost across the board.
Yeah, no, for sure. Big difference. Yeah. Big difference. And it's sort of like, now knowing what we know about Joss Whedon, it's a little like, okay, that sort of tracks.
Yeah, tracks a lot.
Yeah.
Let's talk The Flash. Going into the Speed Force. This was a big thing, right?
Yeah. Huge. I mean, he was like the Spider-Man of this movie. He was like the comic relief in a lot of places where he hadn't been as much, or at least a lot less uncomfortable and a lot less like
Sure.
you know
it also
landing on
wasn't
Wonder Woman and stuff like
it
that.
also wasn't forced.
Yeah.
You know, like this. Although a friend of mine made a great point about his brunch line from the 2017 one, where it's like, okay, so we know that Flash has a hard time connecting with people. And he was like, I'm going to join the Justice League because I need friends. Like this is my reason.
Sure.
And so like, but it like accentuates like his outsiderness by not knowing what brunch is or something like that because he doesn't have friends. He hears people talking about this thing. He doesn't get it because, you know, his dad's been in prison his whole life. He lives in a warehouse. Like he doesn't have tons going for him in a lot of ways. So in some things do track from the previous one that do accentuate, but it doesn't. I got all of that from this one, and it doesn't feel forced.
Yeah, that's right. He wasn't just like quipping for the sake of quipping and stuff. It was I thought more balanced. And then when the Speed Force stuff was some of the coolest. Like I felt like I was reading a comic. You know, like I mean, it felt like this is what the Flash would do. This is how his powers would be used in a group setting, which like this had that like, let's have all the heroes work together and like using their powers sort of to build on each other type of thing, where it's like, all right, well, Flash is going to keep this going while Cyborg works on this and all, like that kind of stuff felt very Justice League to me, felt very, you know, Justice League Unlimited type of thing to me.
Yeah. So everybody has their role, their part to fill in the end.
Yeah, it's not just like sort of he's punching that guy over there and she's punching that guy over there. Like it's more them working together as a team.
That's right.
And he was such a crucial part of that team, and only he could do what he did, and the way it was visualized, the way it was shown, like him turning back time, and everything was really really cool. I liked the Flash and Cyborg were like two of the most improved things about this movie for me.
I agree. I loved the scene of him saving Iris. You know, like but I think my favorite part about it was that like one that he's like, I gotta protect you, I gotta like wrap you up, and I gotta be really careful. You know, like he's thinking about the physics of it, which is cool. But I just really like that he's like, ooh, a hot dog, that'll be helpful later.
Yes.
I enjoyed that. I was thinking about Wonder Woman really does actually have an arc, because she says to Victor, you know, like, I'm still learning to trust people, which actually tracks with Wonder Woman 84. The only thing that really doesn't fit into the current DCEU slate is the Mara's backstory. You know, she's like, my father's dead.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, well, he's not. He's right there. He's a king. You see him? And she's like, he's dead to me. Oh, okay. Yeah, got it. But the rest of it still really kind of works. But she like learns to trust, right? She learns to trust Arthur. She trusts Bruce. You know, she opens herself up. So that's good.
Another one of those character moments that unfortunately got cut from this version, but like at the end of the when she shuts down the terrorists and with like the bomb at the beginning of the film, and there's that one young girl who's like, can I be you when I grow up, basically. Like that was such a beautiful moment, and it was a shame that it couldn't. I mean, to your point, I guess the character moments like that are the first thing to suffer when you have like a runtime you have to stick to. But like,
honestly, I think that one got cut because she kills that guy.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
But I think that's why. I think that's one of the things that they cut. But you know what? Screw that guy. And that moment with that little girl was great.
Yeah, it was.
It was great.
I'm talking specifically about the moment with the little girl. I could have done without the killing, but you could have. I don't know. I feel like that moment was something very, very, very particular to Wonder Woman, and it's a shame that it couldn't stay. And I'm glad it got put back in. Me
too. Although it is a little weird that she says no because I'm a god. That was a little weird. I didn't expect that. Yeah. Well. Yes. So all that works. More Alfred was great. Jeremy Irons continues to rock it.
This is Alfred. I work for him.
That was great. I loved his micromanaging of the tea.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
That was so good. Let's talk Superman and Lois Lane.
Yes. I love that show. So the pilot starts with
pilot is Superman and Lois. Yeah. What did you're a bigger Superman fan than I am, and by that I mean that Superman is my second favorite hero of all time, and he's your first. So you get to go first.
Okay. I was really happy that Superman is the linchpin of this thing. And that when he was gone was why the mother boxes started to ping, right? Because they knew that they were no longer being protected. I love that he's at the center of it. I've been very vocal about my quibbles with the way Zack Snyder portrays Superman. I'm not going to go into it again. There were things I would have done differently, but it wasn't offensive to me. I do wish they had put him in the colored suit, the blue and red suit.
I actually I would like that. Yeah.
At least at the end, right? Like the shirt rip and stuff, I felt like should have been the back in the Man of Steel suit or something.
Yep.
Because
there was something a little dissatisfying about seeing them all together, standing there, staring at Darkseid, staring at Desaad, staring at Granny Goodness, and he's not in yellow, red, and blue.
Yes.
And
yeah,
and I have nothing against the black suit. It's comic driven. Like
totally.
He's
yeah.
resurrected. It's a total comic thing.
That's why I have no problem with it in that scene. He was just resurrected. It's an homage to the comics. I'm on board with that. I'm on board with that. It doesn't, just like it did in the comics, it doesn't exactly feel like Superman when he's not in Superman colors. Right.
Like if Batman was in a purple and orange suit, I'd be like, that's not exactly correct.
Yeah, especially when you have the big like sort of hero shot of all of them, and he's not like they're all in their in traditional. Not Aquaman either, really, but they're in sort of traditional. They all have
Aquaman's
their sort of,
close,
yeah, but they have a
it's
traditional
close.
look, and Superman's the only one who's not. But that's okay. That's a nitpick. That's just a wardrobe thing. That's not a characterization thing. I wish there was more of Superman in it. And Lois, I just don't. Something bothers me about Lois Lane being a shut-in for a year instead of being out there investigating, getting the answers to the questions. A year?
Yep. When Lois shuts down, she goes to work. When Lois is in a good mood, she goes to work. When Lois is anything, she goes to work. That's Lois Lane.
And I get that there's probably the rationale. Like, but this is like she was so far beyond. She was so much more depressed than even that she couldn't even bring herself. Like, maybe that's what they were trying to. But it just
so apparently it's only been about a month. So it hasn't even been a year. It's been a month.
I thought it had been a year. I could have sworn they said a year.
I've been told it's a month.
Okay.
And this is why.
Okay.
This is why, because she's pregnant. Right.
Oh, right.
So
right,
she
right,
opens
right.
she opens the drawer. It's the
force majeure pregnancy test.
Force majeure, like act of God pregnancy test, right? So right, because because Superman, there you are. So she's only she's had it been about a month.
Okay.
So it gives you reason for like a month. Yeah. Okay. So the love of your life, now you're going to be a single mom, is I can understand why you don't want to go to work. It still doesn't exactly ring true.
It's
like,
not. There's just something. It doesn't ring true. That's probably the best way I could say it is it doesn't ring true. Yeah.
No. And then you get that really lovely scene about between Martha and Lois talking about their grief and everything. I'm like, this is good. This is really good stuff. And I feel like it being Martha being Martian Manhunter really undercuts that feeling. I'm like, so like, did you read Martha's mind to get all of that, or did you make it all up? Is that really how Martha's feeling? And I get that. It's cool that somebody as cosmological as Martian Manhunter cares about Lois Lane, right?
Mm-hmm.
The world needs Lois Lane just as much as it needs Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman or anything like that. Like, that is great. I love that. It does undercut their bonding together.
It does.
And the realness of those emotions, but that's okay. But yeah. I agree though. Lois's identity, I think, is a little too tied to Superman in this film. Like, it's a little like, I'm just waiting around for Superman to show up. And that doesn't, I didn't love that
I agree.
So much.
I agree.
Did not care for that. It's all right. I'm not a huge fan of the way that Lois has been portrayed in the DCEU. It doesn't feel like Lois. It's never really felt like Lois to me. But, and this one, I think, at least of all.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
Least of all this one.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf was a huge change. There was a huge change to Steppenwolf, the way he looked, his motivation, everything.
His motivations, he had motivations. They made sense.
Yeah, they did make sense. They sure did.
Oh, you know what? If you want to talk about something that could have been cut, it was his conversations with Desaad. I feel like it was Groundhog Day, and I was watching the same conversation about, well, there's one, I found 2 of the mother boxes. Have you found the third one yet? No, Jabba, but listen, I promise, I'm gonna pay you back.
I can understand that, but I love the New Gods, and I loved that I was watching Steppenwolf talk to Desaad, so I was like, yeah, more of that, please. So I was actually okay with it, but I can see that it would feel repetitive. But I loved Steppenwolf's design. I thought the armor was so cool.
So cool.
Yeah, that was Weta's big thing. I've been told. Insider info has told me that Weta's big thing was some of the Flash stuff, like the new visual effects that they've done. Some of the Flash stuff. They went back and did the history lesson. When Darkseid shows up the first time, and what's his name? Steppenwolf. And, yeah, best effects company out there. You can tell.
Yeah.
By gosh, it looks good.
He looked great.
He looks like a sad puppy. He just wanted to go home.
His eyes were so human. Like, he had these big blue eyes, and I was like, oh my God, you're crying because you want Darkseid's approval.
I know. Well, how twisted are you? And what I really dug about that, especially the end, is that he does get to go home. And that's what I think is what was nicely written about it, is that I just want to go home. I want to get these mother boxes and I want to go home. And he does that. He does get the mother boxes and he does make it home. Good for him.
In pieces.
But what I really like the pieces part is that he's under the heel of Darkseid this whole time, right? And then he ends literally under his heel.
Yeah.
And I just think that was really nice visual. That's really nice visual storytelling.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just like Darkseid is evil, and he's evil for the sake of being evil, because in a big cosmological battle as such as Zack Snyder's Justice League, he's space Satan.
Right.
That's just what he is.
Yeah.
He's the devil incarnate. His planet is Apocalypse.
Exactly. The thing that I thought was, this is maybe I missed something, but it seemed to me like the boom tube was still open. Steppenwolf's head goes through, Darkseid crushes it, and he's just sort of stares at the heroes, and the heroes stare back at him, and the boom tube closes. And I'm like, couldn't he have jumped through to get the anti-life equation if that's what he was really after? But
he didn't. True, he didn't really have the equation. They knew it was on the planet, but it's not like it was in that room, And so, could he have killed all of them? Maybe. Live to fight another day,
I guess.
Darkseid's way is well, I'm gonna torture you and then kill you. I'm not just gonna, I'm gonna play mind games. I'm gonna do this. I gotta have fun. I'm an immortal being. I gotta play the long game. So yeah, I very much enjoyed that.
Yeah,
it was fun watching it with somebody who doesn't know who Darkseid is or mother boxes or anything, because so she was like Darkseid, huh? That's the best name you can come up with. I can already tell he's evil, but I feel like it's a little on the nose. She was like, same with mother boxes. Look, they're mother boxes. What are they? They're a box. They're shaped like a box.
I mean, yeah.
And I said, yeah. And I was of course, me, comic fan. I was like, well, you see, Jack Kirby was really a blah, 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 blah. And in the comics, it's not really a cube like it is and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I'll give you a Darkseid, but it's a cool name. Shut up. Go away.
Wait till she hears about Granny Goodness.
Oh, yeah. So she's old and looks like a grandmother, eh? Oh, yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Was that Granny Goodness standing next to Darkseid?
It was Granny Goodness. Yeah, it was Granny Goodness. Yeah. Not any particular actress that I can tell. I think they CG'd her to be in the shadows, so you for fans.
Right.
This movie was what I actually liked about this movie is that it's definitely for fans. It's definitely for fans of DC Comics.
Definitely.
But also my wife did not ask a single question watching this movie. She was not she didn't explain Darkseid to me, explain who that is, explain what that is. It does a really good job at telling you.
It's self-explanatory. It is self-explanatory. Yeah.
So yeah, I dug it. Things I didn't like. Yeah. Before we can we do things I didn't like?
Please.
Can we do that? Yeah. Oh, things I did like.
Your show.
I'm sorry.
Please.
I sorry. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Things. I'm sorry. The Superman at the farm. Yeah, it's me, Ma. I liked that a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
When he calls her mom, I love that. he says they wanted me back for a reason. I got to find out what that is. I got to hug you. That was some really nice Clark family moment.
The Kent Farm stuff was great. That's why I wanted more of it. It was great. His interaction with Lois was great. His interaction with Martha was great. Honestly, the best 15 minutes that Zack Snyder has done of Clark Kent. it was that sequence.
You know, if you look at it in the arc, like you could tell that he maybe he actually does get Superman, but he wanted to bring him to the place that we love. And like that's hard to see when you just kind of want to see the person that you like. It's the same with Batman. I recognize Batman in both movies, but I don't like the killy Batman. I don't like angry for the angry Batman. But Justice League Batman is one that I recognize. That's you know, just because he's Batman doesn't mean that he's angry all the time. But he got him there, and that was always the intent. And I think that we're not sometimes as fans not great at. I'm not saying that I like every decision made from previous ones, but you know, but.
No, I understand what you're saying, that there was a longer tail story to be told there, and you know, Man of Steel was just the first chunk, and BVS was the second chunk, and it's the third chunk, and had there been a Man of Steel 2, maybe
there would have been. There was supposed to be Justice League 2 and 3, and the original plans are out there. They're floating online. We don't have time to go over them today, but I'm kind of glad that there might not be any more. If things changed, plans change. You know, so like what is out there is definitely probably not the, you know, what would have eventually happened. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about that nightmare sequence at the end, because that's the new footage. That's the real stuff that new stuff that they filmed.
Right. I'm going to just say I could have done without the nightmare sequence completely.
Same.
Could have done without the Martian Manhunter Bruce conversation completely.
Same.
Not that they were bad, but they did feel tacked on.
Yep, absolutely.
Because they were.
The movie feels like it resolves really well. Like Flash running, blah, 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 all that stuff. You get the nice end credit sequence with Lex Luthor and Deathstroke, which was going to set up the Ben Affleck Batman movie. So watching that, I was like, I'm not going to see that. That's really upsetting.
And that was the other thing. The nightmare sequence seems to undercut that scene.
Well, I don't know if it undercuts it as so much as like, I don't know if it undercuts it so much as like, well, they both survive by the end of that story, whatever it is, and now they're the only survivors, so they work together because why the hell not? Because that's what you got to do. So I don't know if it undercuts it just as much as we don't know what the story was.
Yeah.
So, but that nightmare sequence tacked on. I like a good apocalyptic story, but I think all of the character growth that Snyder does with Batman through BVS up to the end of Justice League gets completely blown down in his conversation with the Joker.
Yeah, with like one line.
Yeah, completely like because I'm gonna effing end you. Unnecessary, like just an unnecessary swear, just for the sake of swearing. It doesn't make him stronger. It doesn't do anything. It's just a word. And so, but this is the uncomfortable part. He uses dead Harley to get at the Joker.
Yeah.
That is so gross. And you could make the argument that, okay, well, it's a nightmare sequence, so obviously it's not like gonna be the happy-go-lucky place that we want it to be. It's the worst possible scenario, so we see them say the worst possible things, do the worst possible things. I get that. It's like you don't have to. It's not true story. You don't have to say it. You don't have to write it.
It felt gratuitous. It felt just. I didn't need it. I didn't need it.
Nope. I really didn't. I did appreciate them putting the DCEU's first Batman and Joker on screen together. I did appreciate them having a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was I always thought it was a bummer that in Suicide Squad you have Joker and Batman, but they don't actually cross paths.
Sure, yes.
They're technically even in the same scene, and you don't even see them talk to one another. So it just feels it was just icky. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it one bit. So yeah, I mean evil Superman, blah blah blah. I did find out. Did you know that evil Superman was actually because he's taken over by the anti-life equation? He's not like, it's not like I'm evil for the sake of being evil now.
Right.
And so that makes me feel a little bit better.
Sure.
Not the reason. So like the reason is like according to the first nightmare sequence in the film, Cyborg sequence is like Lois is dead, and Darkseid uses that to uses the vulnerability that Superman feels emotionally at that moment to like seep in past his his nerves of steel.
Yeah.
Right. And so like it's not even like he makes the choice. It's more like in his grief he gets taken over. It's very it's actually very Anakin Skywalker in that way. It's it's not even like what have I done? It's basically like, wow, I'm really sad. Oh, now I don't have control of my mind anymore.
Yeah. That's a fundamentally different take on Superman to me.
Me too. And that's what just doesn't ring true for me. I'm not interested in seeing it. But that doesn't, and we probably won't. And that's the thing. So, but you know what? It was cool to look at.
It was cool. It was a cool movie.
It was a cool movie. And so, yeah, the Martian Manhunter bit, there was supposed to be Green Lantern originally.
I know. Yeah.
Studio said, no, we have plans.
Yeah.
So we said, okay. I do like that General Swanwick was,
I'm still mulling that over. I'm still mulling that over because I'm like, well, doesn't that change a lot of or shouldn't that change a lot of Man of Steel then?
It doesn't really, apart from like you could have helped. Like,
well, he could have helped, but also like he shouldn't be as afraid of Kryptonians.
He's not really though. Actually, I just rewatched it. I don't know if you've rewatched it recently, but I watched it since knowing that he is the Martian Manhunter.
Okay.
And even though that like he didn't know in that movie, you know what I mean? Like there are bits that are like, wow, it really does work.
Okay.
He's the only guy that's actually not afraid of him. Like even when like Superman like breaks the handcuffs and like moves towards like everybody in the room, everybody backs up except for him. Like it's it's actually a very cool visual.
But his motive, as I remember it, is like protection, right? Like protecting the world from this alien who, how do I know I can trust you? Like that wasn't that sort of his.
Sure, but Jean's whole race got wiped out from aliens. Like you don't think that he's a little distrustful of like other people, you know?
I guess it just. I guess it's one of those things that I can't get out of my head, the fact that they didn't know it when they were making that movie, so I can't, you know what I mean?
Zack knew because it was in his BVS plans that
okay.
So that like after Swanwick's conversation with Lois in BVS, he was supposed to transform for a bit, so like we were supposed to know.
Okay.
But I think I got cut for time and whatever other reason, but
that was my only question about that, honestly, was just like, does that work? Does that work? Because I haven't watched Man of Steel in probably a year.
Yeah, it does. It does work. I think it tracks. What actually doesn't track is like, so I've watched 3 giant crises happen, and now I've decided to help.
That's true.
Like, that was
true.
The part that I was like, could have helped before, Jean. Could have helped before.
Yeah,
but
I did think it was
cool
like, this is a nitpick, but it's like when he's like, oh, they call me Martian Manhunter. I was like, I feel like he wouldn't.
Get out of here. What are you on the CW? Get out of here with those kinds of lines.
Honestly, I like the design on the CW better.
Me too. Actually, truthfully, I actually think that the CG on Jean,
I think so.
Especially like season 1 of Supergirl, like when he first appears, like
was pretty great. I think that's a function of this being a late addition to the.
It is a late addition. Yeah. Like, yeah, it is absolutely a late addition. But he does fit. He works, and at this point, I either watch more or I won't. That's kind of after watching it. Like if you continue in it, I'd watch it. If you don't, I don't care. That's where I am.
Yeah. I think I'm in a similar place where if they keep making them, I'll keep watching them. But I'm more ready for a new I'm ready for a 5-year. I should be lucky. I should be so lucky to be 5 years. But I'm ready for a 5-year hiatus and then a reboot. Like I'm ready for the next reboot of this of a Justice League story of the heroes coming together. I'm ready for a fresh take.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see what the Flash movie brings about. You know, for that, it's all time changing and this and the wibbly wobbly nonsense.
It seems like right now DC's thing, Warner Brothers thing for the DC characters is like we're gonna do like lots of disconnected stories, and that's gonna be okay. And honestly, that's fine. I don't need them to be connected.
for a general audience, it's actually a little easier to catch on. Like, I'm still trying to get Mary to watch Marvel movies, and supposedly she's like, man, so many of them. It's like a commitment.
It is a commitment, but it's also a huge moneymaker because it does reel some people in. People who get reeled in get really reeled in, so that's a huge moneymaker for them. DC might just be going about it a different way, and that's okay. That's all. Marvel and DC, whether on the page or on the big screen, have always had their.
They've been different. They've
always had our approach is this, and their approach is that, and that works for the fans. So I expect it's no surprise that the film universes would be any different.
I am happy to watch different creators play in the sandbox. Yeah. Because that's what comics is all about, right? Like writer and artist, inker, blah blah blah. They do their story, they move on, somebody else takes over.
Right.
That's how characters last. Instead of one creative vision, you get many creative visions over a period of time. That's how these characters have been around for 80 years.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
right. So that's fine. Give me bring somebody else into play in the sandbox. That's okay. That's how we have how many different versions of Superman and Batman and Spider-Man and like all these other characters on screen, because the character is bigger than anybody that actually works on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really the important part about them. Wait 5 minutes, you'll get a new version.
That's right. Yeah. So,
So-
but overall, I think this is a better version than Joss Whedon put out. I do think that the studio had a lot of involvement in what we saw in 2017. And
Didn't they?
It's without knowing specifics. In some cases, we know the specifics of like, oh yeah, that was this person's decision, or whatever, the director's decision or not. But without knowing all the specifics about everything, I think it's hard to lay all the blame at the feet of Joss Whedon for what we saw.
No, there's way more at play.
There
than
were
just
too
Joss
many.
Whedon.
There were too many like rules he was given. Like it has to be 2 hours, and it can't be too violent, and it can't be this, and it can't be that, and also here's the footage you have to work with. Go have fun. You can reshoot some of it. It's just like what am I like the
And it's funny because a lot of the stuff that he reshot, that's the stuff that really doesn't work.
Yeah, it's so true.
Like
it's so true.
the new stuff. It's the new stuff that is like that. Actually, even some of the stuff that they recut. Like, I love that everybody's on the same page about resurrecting Superman in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Everybody looks around the table and goes, "This is what we have to do. This is it.
Yeah.
This is the only way to win. We have to do this." Because they're gods playing with fire. They're not people, right? They are literally just like they're playing with their mythological energy.
Yes.
And they're all on board. Even if some of them go, maybe, I don't know how it's going to be terrible. Like, we don't know. But they at least all get there at that moment, as opposed to Batman being like, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Shut up, everyone.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that's not how you build a good team. That's Marvel style. Let's bicker until we work together.
Yeah.
And then we'll bicker again, and then we'll work together, but then we're going to bicker some more.
Yes.
That's the Marvel style. DC, everybody gets along and solves the problem.
Right.
And that's what Zack Snyder's Justice League really is. Everybody gets along and solves the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I like that it's a lesson that Batman learned and like brought to the table.
Yeah.
Like that's his driving thing. Us united, unity. This, and this, and this. Pairs nicely with the mother boxes also having to unite, right?
You
have
create
3 separate
the unity.
individuals. Right, to create the unity. They're both like, the antagonists, protagonists are working together to be one thing.
Yeah.
It's good storytelling. It's very good. So,
Yeah.
But Frank, we're way over our time here. So
way over. I don't even have time to tell you that you can go to beerwithgeeks.com and find all our episodes, including our Justice League episode, which, by the way, I misspoke earlier, and I said that Palmer joined us for that one. It was Damon.
I thought it was Damon.
Yeah. So my mistake. Sorry, Damon. My bad.
It's okay.
That was like 300 episodes ago.
Hello to Dan, my insider as well.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. So it's good.
Yeah. But yes, you can find everything at beerwithgeeks.com, thoughtbubbleaudio.com for all our other shows. You can follow us in any podcast app like Overcast, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever. Apple Podcasts. You can rate and review us there as well. Please leave us your ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. They make a huge world of difference for us. And the best thing you can do is to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio. For as little as $1 a month, you can help keep this show on the air so that Steppenwolf can't take it away from you. But yeah, that's it. We did go over time, but gosh, there was just so much to talk about, and honestly, we didn't scratch the surface. We could go at it for another round, but Hey, thanks as always, Tim, for great conversation, and I look forward to the day when you show up after I've had a nightmare and tell me that everything's going to be okay and that we're going to be heroes together.
I mean, I could do that. I can show up and say that to you.
Okay.
Totes my goats.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, I'm Martian Manhunter. Cheers.
Cheers.